So there are 5 teams best positioned for the number 1 pick in the 2020 NBA draft. So in this video, I'm going to show you guys the mock trade for each 5 of those teams. And I'm going to let you know which teams they are. So before we begin the video, make sure to smash that like button to support the channel. Subscribe if you're new for more daily uploads like these. And now let's get into the first team and mock trade number 1. So the first team is the Chicago Bulls, and the Bulls receive the number 1 pick and trade Larry Markkinen and the 4th pick to the Minnesota Timberwolves. So the reason that this is a good trade for the Chicago Bulls is that they get the number 1 pick in the draft, which means they can get a LaMelo Ball or Anthony Edwards or even James Wiseman. So I'd prefer them to take James Wiseman because a fit with Wiseman and Wendell Carter Jr. would definitely be a nice front court, because Wiseman can definitely work on spacing the floor in the future because he's shown glimpses of him being capable of shooting from outside. So I think that would definitely be a nice fit, as well as Wendell Carter Jr. And they give up Larry Markkinen because it looks like their experiment with Markkinen did not work and that project didn't work for them. And I think trading him away to the Timberwolves for the number 1 pick and moving up 3 big spots up to get the number 1 pick is a great idea for the Bulls, because they could decide whether they want to get James Wiseman, LaMelo Ball, or Anthony Edwards. So all 3 of them would definitely be nice for the Bulls, but I think the best fit would be James Wiseman. For right now, if they get into the number 1 pick, I'd have them selecting James Wiseman as the possibly best fit. Anthony Edwards is interesting because if you play him at small forward, that'll be fine. But I think they should trade Markkinen and then have a front court of Wendell Carter Jr. and James Wiseman. Carter Jr. can play power forward, Wiseman can play center. I like that front court. It looks really good on defense and even on offense. So now let's hop into why the Timberwolves would do this trade. So the Timberwolves would get Larry Markkinen out of it, and maybe they can develop him into a great player like they have done in Karl-Anthony Towns, and soon to be doing even more with D'Angelo Russell. So I definitely believe in the Timberwolves staff and their coaching staff, and I think they could develop Larry Markkinen well. And don't forget, they actually drafted him in the 2017 draft. So kind of having a big 2 or big 3 with Karl-Anthony Towns, D'Angelo Russell, and if you want to consider Larry Markkinen, it would be really good for the Minnesota Timberwolves in stacking up more on young talent. And they have the 4th pick, so I'd want them to draft an Obi Toppin if I were to be them. Obi would fit really well on them because he's a nice stretch for power forward that has a similar game to like someone like Amari Stoudemire or a Blake Griffin. He has that big body frame that could definitely be really useful in the NBA. So I think going to the Timberwolves would help him out in his development. Or Anthony Edwards, but I don't think he'll fall to 4. But if he does, I'm going with him first, then I'm going with Obi Toppin, because having a big 3 of Anthony Edwards or Obi Toppin, as well as obviously Karl-Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell, would really be a great idea for the Minnesota Timberwolves. It would boost up their chances of playoff hopes. They would really be a fun team to watch and an up-and-coming young team that could definitely be on the lookout in the future years. So let me know what you think of that trade, and now let's hop into team and trade number 2. So the second team and the second mock trade is with the Charlotte Hornets. So they're receiving the number 1 pick, and the Timberwolves are receiving the 3rd pick, a 2021 first-round pick, top 10 protected from the Charlotte Hornets. So the reason that this is a good trade for the Hornets is because what if James Wiseman's draft stock rises in the future days nearing the NBA draft? So it might mean that he might be the number 1 overall pick, depending on the fit of the team that possibly would trade for the number 1 pick. So the Hornets would definitely want to be that team. If his draft stock rises, he should be the guy that they want, because he's a great center to fit on their team, just as the Chicago Bulls were, because the Hornets seriously need a good starting center, and Wiseman will bring that right away for them. So I think it's a safe pick to draft James Wiseman instead of going for a player that can have some sort of a chance of being a bust like a LaMelo Ball. And LaMelo Ball is not the greatest fit on the Charlotte Hornets because they have a ton of point guards already, like Devontae Graham, Terry Rozier and those guys right there. And adding another one would not be a good idea, especially that they have a bigger need in James Wiseman in a center than a point guard. So I think drafting Wiseman would be their good choice. And if his draft stock rises once again, they'd have to trade up for the #1 pick to make sure that they will get him. So that's why in today's video, they are a possible trade partner with the Minnesota Timberwolves in order to land the #1 pick and draft their player in James Wiseman. So the reason that this is good for the Timberwolves is that they get the #3 pick, which isn't bad. Obviously, they're falling. They won't just let that happen just like that. So they definitely need to get more picks and assets in a trade that would make them trade down. And a trade with the Hornets would get them an extra first-round pick in 2021, where the draft class there is really strong. So I think that that would be a great idea for the young Minnesota Timberwolves to keep stacking on young players and first-round picks and assets. So I think that's definitely a good trade for both teams. Let me know what you think of this trade. Now let's hop into trade and team number 3. So the third team in trade number 3 is with the Atlanta Hawks. So the Atlanta Hawks received the #1 pick, James Johnson, and the Minnesota Timberwolves received DeAndre Hunter and the #6 pick, as well as 2 future second-round picks. So the reason that this is good for the Atlanta Hawks is that they get the #1 pick and draft Anthony Edwards, because Anthony Edwards is the perfect fit, as some of you guys already might know, because he is from Atlanta, Georgia himself. Playing in his hometown would definitely be his top priority, and playing with a player like Trae Young and John Collins would definitely be a nice big 3, as well as Kevin Huerter and Cam Reddish and all those guys right there would be a nice team, really nice young team. And Anthony Edwards is a shooting guard, so that would be a great fit alongside Trae Young, especially on the offensive side. Defensively, they got John Collins covered there. So the thing with this trade for the Atlanta Hawks is that they have to give up DeAndre Hunter, which is definitely a nice young player that could be something special in the future. I wouldn't say his ceiling is really high, but I think he's a nice 3-and-D player and can maximize his potential being a 3-and-D scorer. But I think if it's for the #1 pick, in order to get Anthony Edwards, because Anthony Edwards will not drop to the #6 pick. And so if it's for Anthony Edwards, I'd do it in a heartbeat if I were the Atlanta Hawks. So I think this is a great trade for the Hawks. Giving up DeAndre Hunter obviously isn't good, but if it's for Anthony Edwards, as I've said, it would be great to do, and they would form a nice, really nice young team to look out for in the future. And for the Minnesota Timberwolves, the reason that this is a pretty nice trade for them is that they get the #6 pick, which means that they could definitely draft Obi Toppin, which is a nice young player, nice young power forward, which I like in terms of fit with the Minnesota Timberwolves, and he could definitely maximize his potential with their developmental staff and play very well with the front court alongside Karl Anthony Towns. They could be a deadly big 2 or even big 3 with D'Angelo Russell. And the assets that they get from the Hawks are 2 future second-round picks. You guys might think that's just not enough for them to move down 5 spots. So that means that they're also getting DeAndre Hunter, which is a fine 3-and-D player that is very young still, and that could definitely develop into a great 3-and-D player that could be really helpful for the Timberwolves. So a starting lineup of D'Angelo Russell, Jarrett Culver, DeAndre Hunter, Obi Toppin, and Karl Anthony Towns would really be a nice squad. Obviously a nice young squad, so I really like this trade for both teams. Let me know what you think of this trade. And now let's hop into trade and team number 4. So the mock trade and team number 4 is with the New York Knicks. So the Knicks get the #1 pick, Jake Layman and Jalen Noel, and the Timberwolves get the #8 pick from the Knicks, a 2021 first-round pick from Dallas, and Frank Ntilikina. So the reason that this is a good trade for the New York Knicks is that they get the #1 pick in order to draft, obviously, LaMelo Ball. And for the Timberwolves, they get the #8 pick, another 2021 first-round pick from the Dallas Mavericks, and Frank Ntilikina, which is a nice young player and a great defensive player that can really turn out to be a special player on defense and an elite defensive player in the future if the Timberwolves can develop him the right way, and I'm sure that they definitely can, and I believe in their developmental staff, as I've stated earlier in the video. And he'd probably play the backup point guard role and be the bench player for the Minnesota Timberwolves. So now let's hop into the fifth and final team and mock trade. So the fifth team and mock trade is including the Sacramento Kings, as the Sacramento Kings get the #1 pick, Jake Layman and James Johnson, and the Timberwolves get the 12th pick, but they also get Buddy Hield. This trade is one of the better trades for both teams, as the Kings receive the #1 pick and can draft one of these two players in Anthony Edwards or James Wiseman. Anthony Edwards would be a replacement, a great replacement for Buddy Hield, a player that reportedly wants out of Sacramento. So Edwards would be a great replacement for him, just get younger with Fox and Marvin Bagley. And that would be a nice young and up-and-coming team with the Kings. Or they could draft James Wiseman, which would be a nice fit alongside Marvin Bagley in the front court. Two lefties on the front court in Bagley and James Wiseman, and that would definitely be an interesting front court. I think that would be a great one for them, as well as obviously De'Aaron Fox at the backcourt. So for the Timberwolves side of this, the reason that they would consider doing this trade is that they get the #12th pick. They're moving it down 12 slots, which means that they have to get something else that has to intrigue them a lot. And that player is Buddy Hield, a player that anyways wants out from the Kings. And to trade him to the Minnesota Timberwolves would be great, because the Timberwolves are apparently and reportedly wanting to win now. So trading for a well-experienced player in Buddy Hield would definitely help them in their hopes for winning in next season and the seasons to go on. So the win now player in all these trades for the Timberwolves would probably be Buddy Hield. So I think that would be a great addition to have D'Angelo Russell, Buddy Hield, and Karl Anthony Towns, as well as draft someone in #12. You have Jared Culver, you have Josh Okogie, you have all those young players out there, and I like their young core. And to draft someone like an Onyeka Okongwu, which might drop to 12 because no draft stocks on him yet, and for some reason he's actually been going down in mock drafts. So if the Timberwolves would somehow steal Onyeka Okongwu at #12 somehow, some way, that would be insane, and that would be a win-win for them. They'd have a crazy good young core, or an Obi Toppin, but he's likely not gonna fall because his draft stocks have gone up or stayed the same. So let me know what you think of this trade in the comments down below. And it was KNYT here, and I'm out. Peace.